Keep watching to meet one of America's top trial lawyers, Tom Metier. Tom will share his story about a case that made a difference.
Welcome to the YouTube channel of Michael J. Swanson. Michael is the author of How David Beats Goliath and is the CEO of Advocate Capital. And now, here's Michael.
Thanks for joining us today. In our series of cases that made a difference, we're learning about the impact that plaintiff lawyers have, not just for their clients, but also on the world in general in many different ways. And here to tell us a story about a case that made a difference is Tom Metier. Tom, thanks for joining us.
Oh, Mike, it's my great pleasure to be here with you today.
Yeah, we really appreciate the work you do in your community and really around the country. You're very well known as being an expert, a board-certified trial lawyer, and I appreciate you joining us to tell us a story of this particular case that made a big difference.
Well, thank you. I'm excited to do it. I wanted to tell you the story about Sansa Ray McClellan. I was practicing law here in Colorado at the time, and I got a call from a young lawyer who was sitting on the courthouse steps with tears in his eyes because he had tried to take her case to trial, and the judge told him he wasn't ready. And so he was advised to call and get some help, and he called me. And I got to meet Sansa Ray, who was a mother of two small boys. She had suffered a traumatic brain injury in a 3-mile-an-hour rear end crash where she was hit on a snowy morning. And she continued to have a series of symptoms that included massive headaches that would last for days at a time. She ended up with an epileptic disorder. She ended up with disordered thinking. She's a single mother. She was working on being a paramedic in addition to, and driving ambulance at night, in addition to working a full-time job in as a secretary type position.
Wow.
Now, I was so happy to get the chance to help, but this was such a difficult case for several reasons. One is that her brain injury actually made her not very likable when you first met her. She was tough. When I came in to meet her in Greg's office, the other attorney, she had these 2 tattoos of these little boys right here, kind of cartoon, and she was saying, "Why can you help me? What do you think you could do?" And I said, "Well, tell me about your tattoos." And then her face just broke into a big smile, and she said, "Well, these are my sons. They're everything to me." And so I said to her, "Well, perhaps if we work together, we could help them." And she thought that'd be all right.
Yeah.
So this is back in the day when we didn't have all the brain imaging that we have today.
Okay.
And so she was unaware of her own brain injury and only went to get diagnosed when her sister kept insisting that she was losing track of time. Now, we found that Sansa Ray was in a condition in which she would have these massive migraine headaches that would put her down for days at a time. And her little boys would find her passed out on the floor. And they'd come and they'd sit next to her and hold her hand for hours. And at that time, they were preschoolers. Now, this is a tough thing. One of the things that was very meaningful to me about this case was that we had to prove that even at 3 miles an hour, a person, a driver behind the wheel, could suffer a traumatic brain injury that would have all these implications.
Oh, yeah, I've never heard of a 3-mile-an-hour crash.
Yeah, snowy morning, she'd stopped at a stop sign, another vehicle slid into her from behind. And so we referred her to one of the world's best hepatologists, Dr. Spitz here in Denver. And he examined her and worked with her. And I wanted to understand, how is it that epilepsy works? And he said it's like having a fire in the brain. If one little area of the brain is like lighting a match, and then it spreads through the forest and causes discharge that then causes one to have seizures. So how do we teach the jury how delicate the brain is? And we decided, with Dr. Spitz's help, to actually bring a fresh cow brain from the packing plant in a bag into the courtroom. where Dr. Spitz was, and he could, with my help, pass it to the jury. We gave them gloves. They could feel how soft it was. They could see how the brain would just lay down. There was no real shape to it because there's no blood pumping and making it into something, a living being. And it gave them then the opportunity to realize how delicate we really all are. Mm. Another part of this case that was very meaningful to me was that I interviewed and worked with Sansa Ray and realized that the way that she spoke post-injury didn't always make sense. So I learned to ask her questions with a symbol, and then I would get an answer. So instead of asking her about love and sacrifice, I learned to say in front of the jury to her on the witness stand, "Tell me about the shoes." And she would talk about these beautiful little tennis shoes that she wanted to get for her children, and how she had to sacrifice and save to be able to do that now that she didn't have a job and couldn't work, and what it meant to her to provide shoes to her kids, and how troubling it was that she couldn't pick them up and hug them because of the condition of pain that she had. We ended up with a significant verdict on her behalf. I had the great privilege of working with this young lawyer who had been overwhelmed. And it ended up that the national press and local press picked up this story, and it got printed not just in the publications for the general public, but in legal publications. Mm-hmm. For the next 10 years, I would have attorneys from all over the country who'd run into me somewhere. When they figured out who I was, that I was the lawyer that took the cow brain in and got this significant verdict in a rear-end, low-speed case, they'd start to tell me how it changed their practice. They'd be in tears themselves because they tried to put cases together and didn't know how to do it in such circumstances. They had all these brain-injured families and patients that became their clients, that they were able then to visualize how to put a brain injury case together. What needs to be proved, not just from the scientific side, but how to use the senses, a touch, bringing in a cow brain, just thinking outside the box, about how they can become great advocates themselves and teach others. And so I was so gratified because we had this one case with a young lawyer who needed help. We got a significant result that allowed this family to make a recovery and to allow Sansa Ray to continue to live on her own with her children. We had a number of attorneys around the country who had been losing these rear-end cases, who all of a sudden figured out how to turn it around because they took an interest and saw the study that it would take, started comparing notes. And then I'd still hear these wonderful stories about attorneys who have represented families and done well for them, just because we did one case and made it public. And what a difference it's made to countless families around the country that I'll never get to meet. So I'm very proud of that particular case.
You should be, Tom. And that's an aspect of cases that made a difference that we have not heard about yet, where that case allowed you to kind of multiply yourself in a way and grow exponentially the services of all these other lawyers without ever having met them. So we hadn't thought about that before. So I learned another new thing today, which is good, about the many ways that plaintiff lawyers, in my opinion, make the world a better place. So thank you for being willing to share that story with us, Tom. We appreciate the work that you do.
Mike, thank you so much. It's a privilege to get to talk with you today.
Thanks for watching. Send your questions or comments to Michael at mike@howdavidbeatsgoliath.com.